We got a big tour today.
Okay.
We got that thing working.
Tell me about your tour.
Oh, I got a list out there. We're going to start at Holly Hill. Then we're going to the place of the shooting. Then we're going to Turpin's Mill. And then we're going to Travelers Rest. And then Newtown. Then back by Greenmount. And then down to King Queen Courthouse where Dahlgren was killed and Rubin Bartley was captured. This is Rubin's memoirs that he wrote later after the war. And he said, and this covers both the shooting incident and this house. It said, while crossing King William County, the advance guard came on 2 mounted men in the road, of whom they demanded a surrender. At this, they wheeled around and tried to make their escape. But 2 shots from as many revolvers emptied both saddles. So the Yankees were good shots. The men emptied both saddles. One of the men we found belonged to the Confederate Signal Corps and was on the lookout for our column, as he had been informed by signal that it was coming that way. That would have been William Taliaferro. The other was on his way to join Colonel Mosby's band of partisan rangers and had his pocket full of papers testifying that he was eminently qualified for that service, it being necessary for a man to get the best of recommendations, also furnish his own horse and equipments. This would have been Benny Fleet. The one belonging to the Signal Corps I took to a house, and he describes it as nearby. I wouldn't say it was nearby, walking at least. Anyway, I took to a house nearby and made him as comfortable as I could. I then sent the man of the house after a physician and left him, never expecting to see him or hear from him again, as I considered his wound mortal, being through the bowels. But I heard from him again and was gratified to know that he recovered. His name is William Taliaferro of King Queen, and as he was a good friend to me, we will hear from him again. So we did.
So then when I put all the pieces together, I finally happened to think about this guy, Callie Alexander, who had worked for Betsy even as a boy. He used to cut the grass over there and all that. But anyway, I asked him, I said, did Betsy ever take you to where Benny died? And he goes, oh yeah. So I said, well, can you take me? And he said, yeah. So the next day he came over in his old pickup truck and brought me here. So everything fits together. And then Roger Weekly, who was the pharmacist at King William Pharmacy, he used to live back here. And he said he remembers reading the book Greenmount. He said, I knew that had to have happened somewhere around here. So I told him about Benny and Willie. You know, when they got shot, they rode their horses to the spring. Benny had been to that spring before, so I guess he knew where it was. But anyway, he said, I know where that spring is. So you have to go down the road a little further. It's 1020 Cummins Road. It's a long driveway that goes back to a house there. And when you get to where the spring is, it's just basically behind this 808 Cummins Road. It's very close. So we don't know what happened to Augustus Sizer. He was an older man, had an empty leg. I don't know if he ran off or rode off on his horse. I don't know. Who was Augustus? He was a man that ran the mill, Sizer's Mill. And Benny writes about going to Sizer's Mill to get things ground and all that stuff. But I don't know where they met up with Mr. Sizer. Found him in Taylor, or they just met each other on the road, I don't know. But Bob was just saying he read somewhere that when he got Willie out of the road, he remembered seeing a house with a light on.
Yeah, about a mile back.
Yeah, and that's why he took him to the Turpin house.
And he carried him inside the house and said he's been shot, do what you can for him, and left. And that's all he ever knew until visited the Libby prison. Found out he looked like he was going to survive.
So, but you know, there were a few houses on this road, but I guess he remembered seeing that house. And if you look at an old Civil War map, there are roads that go to the Turpin house this way.
But
Would
it's
have gone
no
this
longer.
way. No, I don't think those roads are still there anymore. They were probably roads that the farmers used. So that's why he went back to the Turpin house. But Dr. Turpin was a minister, not a medical doctor. So he sent for a medical doctor. And so I don't know who's a doctor was that came and treated him, but do you? I don't know. But thankfully he did. So anyway, this is where it happened. You know, they were on horses, cavalry, and all that. And I talked to a guy one time, and I asked him. I said, "Okay, when they crossed the Pamunkey at Hanovertown, how long would it have taken them to get here?" He said, "Probably a couple of hours." Because they're on horses. I mean, you know, they're cavalry guys and all that. So if they crossed the Pamunkey at about 9, they probably got here about 11. So I would say, you know, midday that day. And then they finally got on down to the river at Alex.
If I
And that's
recall,
the
it
Yankees
was,
you're talking about.
it was in
Yes.
March, right?
Yes. Yes, March 2nd.
So it wouldn't be hot like today.
Yeah, March 2nd,
But
1860.
It was kind of damp and drizzly because it wasn't
It had been really bad weather. That's
Yeah.
why the whole incident of trying to get into Richmond flopped, because it was cold and rainy. Those guys hadn't slept.
sort of nasty
I mean, he
rubber.
says they hadn't slept or eaten for like, what, 90 hours or something? They'd been on court. I mean, anyway. Yes, this is Dawkins Ridge. Right. Yeah, this is the way they came.
How did Willie get Benny to the water? Were the horses still okay and he put him on his horse?
Well, I think they were shot
Marguerite.
and rode to the, yeah, you let her answer that. 'Cause
All I know is what Aunt Daisy said.
Okay.
And Aunt Daisy said that her great-grandfather went to the spring and brought water back to Benny in his hat.
Oh, in his hat.
he probably had on a Confederate kepi. Those had, you know, because he said something about it having like a little hard hat or something, but, and the kepis have like a little hard thing on top.
So
around.
it held water.
Yeah, so it would have held water,
So
but
he
of course.
didn't take him physically to
No,
No.
I think they, when they got shot, they just ran their horses into the woods trying to get away. But and I was telling them coming over here, when the Mammy at Greenmount heard that they were going to scout out the Yankees, she ran across the yard. She threw her apron because the kitchen was separate from the house, and she ran to them and she said, "If them Yankees tells you to halt, you halt." So I really think she had a premonition of what was going to happen. I think black people are kind of like that. They have a little bit more of a spiritual connection. So, and that's really what happened. They told them to halt and they didn't. But, you know, all I can think of is they wouldn't have want to have been prisoners. That would have been terrible. So, anyway.
I'd always wondered if Dahlgren knew what Rubin did and whether or
I
not
don't
he would
know.
have approved of it.
I don't know.
I think he probably did not know.
Probably.
And you're confused.
Yeah, who knows where Dalton was.
Rubin.
Rubin Bartley. He's the guy that got
Okay,
Willie.
your ancestor.
Right.
Okay, if they crossed this river at Todd's Bridge, just a little ways from Todd's Bridge, so they were making some progress going somewhere else.
Well, they would have come down, you know, from Greenmount and crossed it, Todd's Bridge or Dunkirk, whatever it was called, Dunkirk at that time.
Well, the place was Dunkirk.
Yeah.
The bridge was Todd's.
Right. So, and the fleets owned that. It was a toll bridge at the time, but the bridge was out. I think it had either been burned or who knows what was wrong. But the ferry was still there, so I was across the river. But see, the horse, he had just gotten that horse. That horse wouldn't have known his way home. The dog Stewart did. But anyway, so that's how, I mean, everything fits together. It all makes sense. And I was telling them on the old Civil War map, this was called Cattail Road. Bibb Edwards sent me a little copy, and it had the two little dots that said Scott's. And so that's where I knew it had to be Anderson Scott's property. So the church that's at the end of this road was called Cattail Church. I found that out. It's now called Mount Sinai Church. So that told me this was Cattail Road. And so when Callie Alexander brought me here, then I knew we were in the right place. It had to be. And then when Roger Weekly took me to the spring, it all fits together just like a puzzle. Yeah, they got across the Mattaponi.
Look who's here.
And he was actually, Dahlgren, they said, was he had the lower part of his leg amputated, and he was standing on his wooden leg and shooting his pistol at bushwhackers on the other side. I mean, there were like, home guards people, home guardsmen, whatever. They were in the woods shooting at the Yankees. But he took aim at them, but they wouldn't come out of the woods. But they finally got across. They went across it with the boats, horses, and swam across.
This is where Willie was taken after he was wounded.
1840, that's when the sawmills came out. So you can say that's the circle saw, or the sawmill saw. So the first saws was like taking a crosscut saw, and they had two arms that worked up and down. That was your first sawmill. And then, but this is, if you look at it, it's all different angles, like a handsaw. When you saw something with a handsaw, you don't saw it perfect and square every time. And that was pit sawed and hand hewed. But the boards, what do you call it, baseboards and all your trim work, if you get back and study it good, it's hand planed. It's not, so if you look at it, you'll see little ridges here, but it's going up and hand planed.
Yeah, they take those
That's the
hand
way they
blades.
did that
They
one.
had a blade in them.
And the timbers inside, most all the timbers were hand sawn. Now some of the looked like it was a building that they might have come back in and had some halfway decent people that saw and stuff. But I've heard a lot of people say this house was built in roughly 1829 because there's 3 more houses in the county that's exactly like it, built in that period.
Robert Bartley tell you what he found out about why they brought Willie here. I always wondered, why did they bring Willie here?
Because it was Dr. Turpin lived here, and he was called a doctor.
But he was...
Not a doctor.
No, he was a
Sure,
preacher.
doctor and preacher.
Get everybody up
But
in
you know,
here.
the roads were different back then. So
The
they-
roads were different. I don't know where the road was to this house, but I do know that if you go back right around this piece of property, it's a road. If you go up to this end of this piece of property, there was an old house up there, and then there was a road from there right out to Cummins. Now, you come up Cummins Road, Cummins is actually that way from here, right behind me, running this way. And there was an old dirt road that came up through the woods and came up and went out to 30, and it went across over here and went down beside my property. But that road was cut when the people on the corner couldn't go across the creek, because actually the easement of that property goes to 611. But it got wet, and Billy Banks up here said he helped cut this road out that went to 30. Now they're not using it, and they're not using the house over there. They had a big dispute with the family, and one man was working on it, and his brother bought it because the man gave his sister $50 for her share in the property.
When you came here, were you aware this was Turpin House?
No. I just bought it from Billy Banks. And
Were you aware of the history that we're interested in?
but my first wife said it was built in 1858, but that's carved all over the house. And it's got his son's initials over the front, beside the front window over top the porch, with his initials and somebody else's. And I said, okay, in 1858, that was his son with his girlfriend's initials. The way they played around carving it, because up on this wall, I don't know if his brick is still up or not, but they redid the chimneys. It had 1858 beside a lightning rod cable that came down there. There wasn't any lightning rods on the house when I got it, but it was, you had to clamp that held the cable was down that side. So I was thinking that they saw the man carve in 1858, and everybody else put 1858 with their initials on it. So, you know, kids do stuff like that.
But they got 2 mules, and they rigged up a bed between the 2 mules. And of course, with a bowel wound, you shouldn't be shaking any more than necessary. Yeah. Well, you can imagine riding from here to Newtown between 2 mules on a bed.
It might not be that long, but I bet it felt like it.
It felt like
Probably
it.
took all day, I would imagine. It's not close, yeah.
So I would say that, you talking about the road from here, I would say that road would be the road to go out almost where, what is that, Rose Garden Road? It comes out on Cummins? Rose Garden Estates or something?
Yes.
It would be long in there, because I remember we would go down through the woods, the road was good, except when it got to the creek. And I didn't want to drive across it. I mean, it was muddy and mucky, and I was thinking the horse and wagon go through there. But that was a road all the way over to Cummins.
Yeah, if you look at the old Civil War map, you can see old roads that came by here.
Right,
Yeah.
and it is Civil War, because I think it's Yankee bullets in this field and Confederate bullets were in this field. Because that's what you could find. You know, I don't know what they were shooting. I don't see no bullet holes in the house or anything that hit the house. Bullets that would have hit the house. I don't see any little dents, indentations that were did.
Remember, there was a light on. So they would have had to pass this house on the way to where the spring is, basically.
Yeah, right.
And then he rode back that way to this house.
Right, because see, that could have come back up that road, because that road came on out and hit 30. And that was all dirt road. And all the houses over here was not there. They've been built in my lifetime, up and down 30 all around here. I don't know when that house over there in the back was built, but that's batten board siding. It was on the original house, a little small house. Then it was add on.
We're going to have to.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Longers.
Y'all have fun. And
Thank you so
I'm
much.
glad y'all came by, and at least you could see the house.
Oh, it's helped.
Hey, Margie, turn around and smile. Hold on.
Take your hat off so we can see your face.
There, oh, that's good.
Okay.
Was born.
Okay, the significance for us here at Travelers Rest, our great-great-grandfather, who was William Alexander, who's also buried at Newtown, we'll see his grave in a little while, his home was the Hermitage, which was on the borderline between King, Queen, and Caroline County. And I've heard and read a lot about the Hermitage. But when William, our great-grandfather, Willie, in the story, this was later after the war, and he was married to Kate Robin, and they hadn't been married long, and they had inherited the house, the Hermitage, and it burned down. And when he heard it was on fire, he was rushing back to get there, and one of the slaves, one of the black men was headed the other way and says, "No use going back, there's nothing there but ashes." And so he needed a place for him and his family to stay. This is where he stayed. And so they stayed quite a while here. Margie, do you have anything to add?
There's several burnings. I think there's some that Hermitage burned twice. And the second time, they took a piece of property that was part of Hermitage, and that's where they built Morrill Bank. And the time mentioned in Greenmount after the war was when Morrill Bank burnt. And that's when they met. This is one of the letters that Fleet family wrote.
So Morrill Bank was built on the farm.
Was part of Hermitage, and it was built after Hermitage burned. But I think it burned twice.
I've been trying to find anything I could on the Hermitage. I've heard a lot about it. If any of you come across
Bill,
this,
I think Billy Turpin can tell you where it is.
is that right?
I think he can.
You
Billy,
think?
you know Billy.
Yeah, no,
He's
really.
real quiet.
Yeah, I know
He's real
Billy.
quiet. You
Yeah.
gotta drag stuff out.
Yeah, I know
But
Billy.
I'll bet you he can tell you where it is.
I wonder if it would have anything to do with, where, the area where Hermitage Country Club is and Hermitage High School.
No,
That's
Somewhere on this
on
road.
Richmond, Jack.
Yeah, that was
Same name.
in a different orbit, so to speak.
Okay.
By the way, King Queen County was the county in the mid-1800s. Beautiful homes, a lot of socializing and partying. Your father, Charles Robin, told me that everybody was kin to everybody who was within one day's horse ride. So stop and figure out how that worked. So tomorrow, John and Jamie, I want to show you a newspaper article. And I'm going to show you that even your daddy, before he was married, had a social life. So in King and Queen, it was a lot of good people here.
I remember reading earlier, don't know if it's still true, but that King Queen County was the only county that lost population since Revolutionary.
That's right. That's right.
There were more people in this county in the 1860 census than there are today.
Yes, sir. That's right. Wow. That's true.
Quite interesting, you know.
So, what year did you say?
1760.
Seven.
I'm pretty sure if I'm not.
You know, if you ever run for office, that's going to come out. Russian collusion.
Yeah, so that was very interesting. And we had a lady stay later on, but she knew the story and she said somebody pulled her blankets off. So, but she knew the story, so I'm pretty sure that that had something to do with it, But do you have people stay there regularly? Yes, we do.
Okay.
We have about 20 days out of the month are booked. There are always people who are interested in history, who travel to Williamsburg, Petersburg, Fredericksburg, Charlottesville, so they kind of sit here in the middle and go to different places. That's most of the people. I have a little vacation and they do pony camp here and stuff like that.
Okay, Bill, why don't you tell us where we're at, why we're here, and what we're going to do?
We're in downtown, Newtown, Virginia, and we are at the Lee Bowler House,
I'm going to sit over there.
which is the home, was the home of Lee Bowler when William Taliaferro was shot, and Rubin Bartley was captured. And anyway, it was from this house that his uncle went to see Rubin Bartley in prison, in the Libby prison in Richmond. And anyway, this is the uncle that sought to help Rubin Bartley while he was in prison. Of course, my great-grandfather William's mother was a bowler. And so he got to stay in all of the houses that the Bowlers owned at one time or another. So we're here now where William and his father, his parents are buried, and we'll visit the cemetery after lunch.
And this lady next to you would be, maybe, that might be Linda?
That's Linda.
Linda, she won't turn around. Oh, it really is.
Yeah.
And across from you,
This is Debbie Bartley.
I'm eating.
and right in front of me,
I'm Mary Beth. I'm Bill's youngest sister, Oscar Taliaferro's youngest daughter.
And I'm Peter, Mary Beth's husband.
oh, wait a minute, get in there again.
I'm Peter, Mary Beth's husband.
And we have back there on the wall.
Kathy McQuarrie.
And, okay, and right in front of me here, we have a backlight issue, but that's all right.
I'm Marguerite. I'm Mary Beth's sister and Bill's sister.
And across from you, I gotta get a better angle here.
I'm Linda Williamson, and I am Bill's cousin-in-law. Married to this handsome man right here.
I'm Jack Williamson, son of Pete Oliver Williamson, and so I'm cousin to half the people here.
And right here in front of me.
Oh, Richard Rode, married to Karen, who is a Taliaferro descendant.
My mother was Nana Catherine Taliaferro, and I am Bill's first cousin.
And here, sir.
My name is Robert Bartley from Southern Indiana, and I'm a family member of Rubin Bartley.
And over here we have somebody who looks like a stranger.
I'm Penny Geiger, and I'm a friend of everybody's.
Do they feel the same way about you?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Chapman Arguelles. I am a distant relative of the Taliaferros.
Okay, we're going to try this again here.
Now that I'm eating, I'm Peter.
Very good.
And I got swallowed into this family.
Earlier that some of the letters that were in Benny's pockets, we still have. The one, yes, we do. The one written bubble, or the letter he wrote to Miller.
And then on my grandmother's side is Montgomery.
So they're still agreeing now.
You're still over here. So you're taking the wreath to put on the grave?
Yeah, we want to do this for Rubin's family, for Willie, and we're going to put this on Willie's grave today.
Oh, that's lovely. And that's a nice looking wreath too.
Thank you. This is a story that you don't hear very often. These types of things happen, especially in the middle of a war.
Yeah, exactly.
But it did, and 153 so years later, here we are.
Yeah. And actually, you know better than I do, but what exactly, how did it work? What really happened?
Rubin's account was that as the column was moving forward and in the darkness they heard some gunshots. He rode ahead to see what was going on and found the two young boys had been shot and had gone to the close spring, and that Benny Fleet had deceased, and the other boy, Willie, was shot through the bowels, as he said. And for whatever reason, the good side of him came out, and he picked him up and rode back several miles to a house that he remembered had a light on, and left him there. Turns out it was a minister's home, and he went and got a doctor and was able to save his life. And because of that, a lot of these people are here today.
Wow, that's amazing. So then, which one was the Confederate? Which one was the Union soldier?
Well, the Union soldier was Rubin Bartley, and I think for years and years the family didn't know his name. They just called him the kind Union General. That's our officer. That's what they had heard for years and years until we found each other on the internet, on a Facebook page, and decided to get together today.
Really?
Yep.
So so how did you find him? I mean, what was on the pages that were you able to track that?
Well, after the war, Rubin, the kind Union officer, moved to Southern Indiana. He moved into the small town where my mother grew up, And my last name being Bartley and his last name being Bartley kind of was a little strange, but he didn't stick out as my family until I started researching him and then found out the history about the war and coming to Indiana after the war, and here we are today.
I want to introduce you to Bob Bartley from Indiana. Anyway, he's a descendant of Rubin Bartley, who saved our great-grandfather William, who is buried here, and he wanted to lay a wreath at his grave. So, Bob, would you do the honors?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, what you see here is our family's burial plot up to my great-grandfather's generation. Over here, William Alexander and Susan Miller Bola, they are our great-great-grandparents. Josephine was born at Traveler's Rest, you see.
This William, the son of this one right here?
That's right. And, you know, a lot of children died in childhood in those days, and of course they lost 2 daughters. And are you familiar with those 2 graves?
I
Marty?
don't know about those two, but Caroline was one of.
Okay, good.
This little girl, Katie Peachy, she died of diphtheria.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old is she?
5.
All right, here is William Bola, Lord Bola, and epitaph.
That's William Lee Bowler, I think. Because then he had a son named William.
He was Lee as well?
I think so. And there's a son named Lee and William and John, 3 sons.
Okay.
Then their dad was June Lee Bowler, right?
Was it
June?
I don't know. June?
June Lee Bowler. He was
The father of this man?
think so,
Oh,
yeah.
June?
Yeah.
Don't know that.
June Lee Bowler.
Over here we have an interesting obelisk. It's sort of given how everybody is tied in. Chapman, Bates.
1911.
Oh, never.
That was done when he was alive.
That's
Holmes
right.
just died about, what, 8 years ago?
Right.
And Daddy died in 82, so this was all put up well.
W.H. Chapman's my grandfather, and Mary Chapman was his sister.
She married Rosalie, married Old Tom, Old Thomas Jefferson. And then they had Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Rosalie's the daughter. Am I right in saying that? Thomas Jefferson married Rosalie?
You're great.
So this is my grandfather, right there.
That's your grandfather?
That's home.
That's my
home.
yeah, that's Holmes. That's my
Right, and
grandfather.
his father was Willie Holmes.
It was through his mother that was.
That's right. That's right. His mother
Was a babe.
This is our cousin Billy's father.
Yeah, his mother was
Yeah.
Mary Babe.
His home.
The father of Holmes was
Willie Holmes Talbot.
and he married
Mary Bates.
right.
So when I was coming along, I remember as a youngster, Pop would bring us over to visit Tom Bates. He was county treasurer, he was a farmer, a leading citizen. So I remember Laura, I was talking to Laura one time, she said there's a place called Spindle Shop near Loretto.
Yeah, there's an old spindle house that goes way back.
Well, I'm familiar with the Fauntleroy family. They were friends of the Fleets at Greenmount, and I would presume that my great-grandfather knew them well. And, you know, all the big plantations socialized with each other. And so evidently Willie was well known in this area, including Benny Fleet.
But they were friends, right?
They were the best of friends. Each one said that in separate writings. The Fauntleroys would be the prominent family that owned this place during the time of Greenmount and my great-grandfather. So they would have all known each other socially. And anyway, the older Stones are also Fauntleroys. First of all, this lady, you don't know, only I know how much she's worked on this. And of course the weather hadn't cooperated. Other than the heat, it would be a very pleasant experience. But anyway, we've got a little token to give her. And I have discovered, there's a lot of talent in our family, but I have discovered that Catherine's daughter, Kristen, is an accomplished artist and creator of earthenware. And so we asked her to create one especially for Terry, which she's done. And I want to present that to her now.
Let her unwrap it, dear.
Well, I'm trying to get some of this stuff out.
Oh, wonderful.
I love that.
Thank you.
No, it couldn't be more appropriate.
And she put on the bottom, turn it over. Yeah.
It's got turtles, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
She signed it.
Oh, beautiful. Oh,
But look at the card.
Does it have her address on it so
Well,
I can write her? Please hand wash and no microwave. Made by Willie Taliaferro's great-great-granddaughter.
Oh.
She's got a lot. I'm not sure I spelled great-great-granddaughter right, but I'm hoping so.
Looks right to me.
And did you
how clear my mind is at 9:30 on Friday evening. And so I thought it was a trick question. But she asked, do you know why you exist? And so imagine thinking about that late Friday night. And so anyway, do you know why all of you exist?
Because of his ancestor.
His ancestor, Rubin Bartley. So this story begun to take legs of its own. He said he would like to meet some descendants of William Taliaferro, and so she asked me to contact it. We've been corresponding for a year, and we've asked him to, I invited him to our family reunion, and lo and behold, he accepted. So they're the nicest people in the world. We want to thank you for coming so far. Did you want to?
Well, I would like to thank you and Linda, first of all, and your family for having us here, inviting us and putting us up. And then this, a little bit of a surprise. When Willie was shot in the road, I had a version in Indiana and you had a version here. They were pretty close.
One was federal and the other was Confederate.
We were damn Yankees. I think that's how you put it. But
no, we used the term kind Yankee officer.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I found that out too. I guess I would call it a miracle. What Rubin did, he didn't have to do it. It was in the middle of the night. Scooped Willie up, took him to a nearby home where they called the doctor and saved his life. And I found out yesterday, I believe, that Rubin had taken a different route than the main Union force took. because the key to all of this was when Willie was shot, Rubin scooped him up, had him put up on his horse in front of him. He took him to a house, the Turpin house. That he took that shortcut route through the woods and past the Turpin house and saw that there was a light on in that house. And that's what he remembered. I'm going to take this boy to that house. So he went back through the column to the Turpin house and went in and left Willie there. Saved his life, and the rest is history. So.
Well, anyway, we welcome you today. Please, everyone, come and speak to them. They're great people. They really are.
You are too.
So anyway, Carl, thank you for this. I don't think I'm going to do a lot of work with it, but I certainly will put it in a place tomorrow. And you want to introduce this?
Yeah. This is Cecilia, our granddaughter.
Aww.
4 daughters of our first son. And this is Julie.
Yes.
It's just an honor for us that y'all wanted to come today, and I want to thank Laura Ann Brooks. She's a very famous person in your family.
Laura Ann, where are you?
Oh, there's Laura Ann. Amazing horticulturist, and she did the beautiful flowers in the house in honor of today. We're just so glad you could all be here. It means a lot to us.
I had one more thought to share. My grandmother was here today. I did know my grandmother when she died. And I think she would say, Julie, you decorated the house like I always dreamed about.
Well, here's one more thought too. We didn't plant these trees. You know, this is the thing about may you live to enjoy the shade of your tree. Well, we're enjoying the shade of these trees that the Taliaferro family put in this yard. So, what a blessing from them. They're here with us.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to wear out our welcome today. So please let everybody try to do all they can. No wet bathing suits in the house, and you know, all the things you know.
That never happens.
Aunt Daisy said to mind your manners.
Or spiritual.
Yeah.
Do I see Alan?
Yeah.
Is Alan here? I need a nurse.